Hi there. Welcome to the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. I'm Todd Rhoades, your host for the podcast. Also one of the co-founders over at chemistrystaffing.com. Hopefully I am your trusty navigator on this crazy journey of hiring and staffing and building healthier church staff teams. Today is episode number 243 of the Healthy Church Staff podcast, and we started it on January 1st. We've been going every Monday through Friday for 5 to 10 minutes here, and I've really enjoyed so far our time together, and hopefully you've enjoyed listening and go along with my tirades from time to time. All right, today we're continuing on our series, kind of year-end considerations for hiring. If you are at a church that is looking at your budget or looking at hiring for 2025. So today we're talking about something that doesn't get really, I think, I work with a lot of churches in the area of staffing, doesn't get enough attention. And that's really the cost of a bad hire. Okay, I know what you're thinking, Todd. I don't really think about bad hires. We're focused on getting it right, and I get that. But here's the truth. A bad hire doesn't just affect your budget, and it will affect your budget big time. But it affects your team and your culture and your ministry effectiveness in ways that are hard to bounce back from. So today we're going to unpack the true cost of a bad hire and even more importantly, how you can avoid making one. Let's start with the obvious, money. A bad hire can cost your church tens of thousands of dollars between salary and benefits and onboarding costs and eventually replacing the person. It is a big financial hit. If you've ever made a bad hire, and just about everybody I know has, just about every church I know has at some point, that it's a big financial hit. One study even estimates that the cost of replacing an employee can be anywhere from 50 to 200% of their annual salary. So if you hired a pastor, let's say at $60,000 a year, and it didn't work out, you could be looking at $30,000 or more to recover. And that's $30,000 of you not paying anybody. That's $30,000 of lost time and momentum and manpower. But it's not just about the money. Let me say this here, though. When I talk to search teams and elder boards and search committees across the country at churches, this is probably their number one fear. It's why they hire chemistry staffing a lot of times. It's the fear of, man, we just can't screw this up. We can't make a bad hire. And it's not just about the money, but people are saying and telling us all the time, we really need some outside help, some outside eyes and ears to help us to know to see things that we don't see so that we don't make a bad decision. All right, so we already talked about money, but that's just part of it, okay? A bad hire, the ripple effects of a bad hire can be absolutely devastating. And if you've ever been a part of a church or you've ever done a bad hire, you know this to be true. I'm going to mention 3 ways here really quickly that the ripple effects beyond the money. The first is team morale. Imagine that you hire somebody who's not a good fit, and within 6 months, your staff's walking on eggshells. What was a bad hire? Maybe they know it was a bad hire, the person you hired. Maybe they don't, according to how self-aware they are. But your staff knows that it was a bad hire, and conflicts start to arise. People start to get frustrated. Productivity just absolutely tanks. A bad hire doesn't just impact the person in the role. It affects the entire team, your whole staff. And let's be honest, once morale starts slipping, it's really tough to get that back. So, money, team morale, it can do some cultural damage as well. Culture is one of those things that takes years to build and minutes to break. If you bring in somebody whose values or leadership style don't align with your church's culture, it can create a lot of tension. I once worked with a church that hired a worship pastor who didn't share their vision for team collaboration, and within a year, half the volunteer band had quit. And it took almost 2 years to rebuild that ministry. It can do some real cultural damage. And then lastly, I could talk about this all day, but let me just give you one more. Cost of a bad hire. Money, team morale, cultural damage, lost momentum. Now this is a sneaky one, right? A bad hire can derail your ministry momentum. And instead of focusing on reaching and growing within your community, you're stuck dealing with internal issues, with conflict resolution, reassigning tasks, and eventually restarting the hiring process all over again. It's exhausting and it's deflating, and it'll take your eye off the ball and you will lose momentum. So why do bad hires happen? I get asked this all the time, Todd, why do bad hires happen? A few, just really quickly. Man, again, I could talk on this all day, but you would get bored really quickly, I'm sure. I would be interested in myself, but you would be bored. Why do bad hires happen? Okay, 3 common culprits. Number 1, churches rush the process. Hey, we need somebody now, and we got to hire somebody now. We got to fill the hole now. So you cut corners and you hire somebody that maybe you knew, maybe you didn't know, but just wasn't going to be a good long-term fit. So don't rush the process. Going along with that, ignoring red flags. You see some potential issues before you hire the person during the interview process, but you convince yourself, it'll work out. They'll work out. It'll all be okay. Yeah, it's going to be good. Spoiler alert, it usually isn't. They usually don't work out. It's usually a bad hire. If you ignore red flags that you see before you make the offer, it's going to come back to bite you. And I won't tell you where it's going to bite you, but it's going to bite you hard. Okay? And then finally, poor fit. The candidate that you hire might be skilled, but their theology or their culture or their personality doesn't align with your team. And we're going to talk about that, the culture and theology and personality piece and the chemistry piece here in the next week here on the podcast. So keep listening. The good news, these pitfalls are absolutely avoidable if you take your time and you approach hiring with intention. Okay, so here's your practical bottom line, okay, for today. A bad hire is far more expensive. It's far more expensive financially and emotionally and spiritually than waiting for the right person, okay? So here's your action step. If you're in the middle of a hiring process, take a step back and ask yourself, am I rushing this? Am I ignoring any red flags? Have I clearly defined what a good fit looks like for this role? And if you're not in a hiring process right now, use this time to prepare for the future. Create a profile of what a healthy team member looks like for your church. When the time does come to hire, you'll have a much clearer picture of who you're looking for. And hey, if this topic hits a little close to home, I'd love to chat. Whether you're in the middle of a tricky hire or you've just come out of a bad experience, I'd love to help. Just shoot me an email. Catch me anytime. podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. And again, if you haven't already, hit subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. Tomorrow we're going to start diving into those 5 key areas that we use at Chemistry Staffing with every church that we work with and every candidate that we work with. 5 key areas. You won't want to miss it. 5 key areas that every church and every candidate need to agree on. And tomorrow we're going to start with theology. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Okay, that's it for today. Remember, hiring is one of the most important decisions you'll make for your church. And man, you just got to get it right. Take your time. Trust the process. Don't settle. If you need some help, reach out. Again, podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. All right, thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. I appreciate you, and I will see you here on the podcast, or at least you'll get to listen to me here on the podcast right here again tomorrow. Have a great day.